even when I wrote the introduction for my book, and I wrote this book very quickly, you know, I wrote, of course, you know, even while I'm trying to reclaim the political value of rage, of course it's bad for you. It corrodes. My dentist told me while I was writing the book that, he said, all my women patients are angry. And I said, oh, really? I took this as a good sign. And he said, yes, it's so sad, they grind their teeth. And I've read all this coverage, stress and high blood pressure, and it's all very plausible to me.
I'd like to suggest that was knowing laughter.
Right. Right. And of course, right, we know to be angry, but part of what I came to think, and this was, I am anxious about saying this out loud because it's always taken as self-help, and I do not mean it as self-help because there is real censure and punishment for women who express their anger, and I'm in an extremely unique position. I was being paid, literally paid, to write a book about my anger and to take the anger of other women seriously. I was like in an anger biodome, right? Nothing bad was going to happen to me. I was being rewarded for being angry. But in the 4 months that I wrote this book, I actually, I was under enormous stress and I was horrified by what was happening at the world, and I had all kinds of reasons to be anxious, but in fact my physical health was sort of never better. Truly, and I didn't go in thinking about this at all. I only realized after the 4 months I was writing it, and I went back to revise the introduction, and I saw that sentence I'd written that said, of course anger's bad for you physically, and I was like, wait a minute, like I have been sleeping more soundly, wanting to exercise more than I have ever exercised in my life. Like, not because I was trying to exercise, just because I wanted to get outside and move. Like, what? That was not, I've never been that person. I was eating well, my relationships were good, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't actually know that. And I've been like sort of, you know, not only taking my own anger seriously, but taking the anger of other women seriously. That's been my job every day for 4 months. And I have never felt better. And I began to think about the fact that part of what happens to all of us, and there's a lot of writing in the book, so many women talking about swallowing their anger, knowing they can't express it because it's going to undermine their point, knowing that they'll be heard as hysterical or infantile if they yell, or that it'll risk their job, and women of color talking about how if they express anger, even for the most righteous reason, they risk being jailed or shot. You know, the risks out there for expressing anger are so real, and so what do we all do? We bottle it up, we swallow it down, we keep it inside. Well, I think that might make us grind our teeth.
I would say.
And I think that... And again, this is not...
And by the way, can we just throw Michelle Obama in here, who got accused of being, famously, an angry black woman?
Yes, she did, for expressing the mildest of critiques. Right. Lots of women said to me while doing interviews for this book, black women talked all the time about how they're presumed to be angry when they walk in a room, whether or not they've opened their mouths. Mm-hmm. I mean, the ways that anger is used to fetishize, vilify, make into cartoons women. It's different depending on whether you're black or white or rich or poor, but there are all of these different ways in which anger is used to disqualify you as fully human, when the fully human thing to do, by the way, is to feel anger as part of the range of human emotions like joy and fear and sadness. Of course we all feel angry.
What's the difference in our culture about the way we see angry men and the way we see angry women?
Uh-huh. I like beer! It gets you a spot on the Supreme Court. Is what it does. Well, here's the political anger that we, that is like our national lullaby, is the anger of the founders, right? They threw tea in a harbor.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if women did that? Women actually did later in North Carolina.
Right.
You don't hear about it as much.
But there is a monument to it.
But there is a monument to it. Our revolution, and I actually, part of what I argue in the book, is that one of the reasons that women's political anger is discouraged is because we have it in our DNA how consequential it can be when you get angry at inequity. Because what those founders were angry at was taxation without representation. They were angry at the fact that a government was policing them and taxing them and profiting from them without having them represented in government. And they were so angry about it, give me liberty or give me death, live free or die, throw the tea in the harbor. It was it was the revolution, it was a war, it was a break with another country and the formation of a new country. Mm-hmm. And that was anger at injustice. And it made a new country. And what did those founders do in making their new country? First of all, they built it out of the genocide of a native population. And they immediately set about codifying its institutions on the labor of populations who would be unrepresented in its government and would not have a chance at civic participation, who were enslaved, who were denied rights, protections, and a franchise.
Men's anger got rewarded.
They rewarded themselves.
Okay, fine.
I mean, they rewarded, yes, it got rewarded. It's consequential, and we understand it. When we think about voters in this country who are angry and who a political press and political parties understand we have to take seriously, it's the guys in diners, right? There are 30 stories in the newspaper every week about guys in diners. That's not wrong. I want to be really clear. The white guys in diners, what they're angry about, we should be paying attention to. There's an opioid addiction, job loss, technology changing, low wages, lack of access to health care. But imagine if we took everybody else's, we understand that anger because the press tells us every day, it treats it as diagnostic and instructive, and it points us to the things we need to fix, and we should fix those things. But imagine if everybody else's anger was treated in that same way. Imagine if the anger that undergirds the movement for Black lives, instead of being written about as disruptive mobs, thugs, Meghan McCain has called them a hate group, right? Imagine if being, and that is a movement consciously led, founded by Black women in response to state violence against African Americans. Imagine if the coverage said, well, what the political candidate really didn't do was take Black Lives Matter activists seriously enough. No, what we're told on the left, I'm on the left, that when Black Lives Matter activists interrupted Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton during their campaigns, that they were creating problems for those candidates. They were problematic because they were disturbing the events. Well, they were creating chaos.
Or taking the anger over climate change seriously.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is seen as a left issue, which is an issue that, of course, affects us all deeply.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, this is I think the Brett Kavanaugh, the white working class voters in the diners, the founders, there are all kinds of models around us for how, and I think in part it's because white men as still are first imagined and still normative citizens, right? Politically and also in our literature, right? Our heroes, the people we can imagine as fully human. The people who are presented to us constantly as fully human in ways that other kinds of people aren't sort of permitted to be. They're also presumed to be rational, right?
Just because they're white men.
White men are presumed to start from a point of rationality. And other people are not. And women are presumed to start from a point of over-emotionality and irrationality. Hysteria. So when women get angry, it just confirms their hysteria and distances them further from the possibility of being taken seriously as politically rational thinkers. But men are granted the presumption of rationality, and so when they get mad, like Brett Kavanaugh, who, by the way, threw a temper tantrum, but that anger can be coded. And I think it's important, by the way, that some people did see that, right? The powerful men he was getting angry for, they understood that anger to undergird a rationality and a righteousness, right? It amplified the seriousness of his point. And anger in powerful white men is often taken for strength, leadership, passion, right? Because they're presumed that whatever they're angry about, they're certainly rationally invested in.
Well, look at the Founding Fathers.
Exactly. But I think it does matter. It does matter that a majority of Americans did not believe Brett Kavanaugh. That matters. So the powerful men he was playing for, including probably the president, and that Lindsey Graham was playing for when he had his rage fit, those powerful guys saw those expressions of anger and understood them to be signs of, strength and I think they, it got him on the Supreme Court. I mean, they would have done anything to put him on the Supreme Court, but it matters that a popular vision of him was
right. There was that.
There was Matt Damon on Saturday Night Live.
So
right? That matters. It matters that there was a view, that there are other views that have enough, we're changing the way that we just reflexively understand that nutty display to be serious and deserving of respect.